All right, well, good afternoon to you all. Thank you for being here. My name is Johansen, and I work with the Center of Excellence. I'm a clinical psychologist here, and I also work at the Cherokee Health Dameron Pediatric Primary Care Clinic. And I've been working with the COE for several years now. And what I'm going to present on today is actually one of the things that I present to foster parents with through the Center of Excellence. So again, I want to just thank you all for being here today, taking the time out of your busy schedule to come. We really do value your input, so at the end of the training today, we'd really appreciate it if you'd fill out this survey. Once you fill it out, you can hand it in to Carolyn, and she'll give you a certificate for being here today. Also want to show you, and that's in the packet of things that you got today. Also want to show you that next month, we are going to have a learning cafe on helping schools respond to tragedy. So if you want to come and see that, feel free to sign up. And then lastly, there's a couple handouts that I've given you today for the presentation. Throughout the talk today, feel free to give me your comments, your thoughts, your questions. Feel free to interrupt as we go along here. All right. So how many of you, I'll just get an idea so I can kind of tailor this to the audience here. How many of you work with foster parents? So several of you work with foster parents. Okay. And so part of the why I'm going to talk about this today is because if you do work with foster parents, how many of you have heard, this is the hardest job I've ever done? Or how many calls do you get a week that say, I don't know how to do this? What's wrong with this kid? Why is he or she doing X, Y, and Z? And maybe even if you don't work with foster kids, you can imagine that the children who come into custody often have behavioral problems that we don't always understand why they're doing what they're doing. And that part of helping foster parents is shifting that lens. Shifting the lens away from what is wrong with this kid to how can I help this child and how does their behavior make sense in light of all of what they've been through. And so this curriculum, it's nothing I've created. It's called the Caring for Children Who Have Experienced Trauma, a workshop for resource parents. And resource parents, why is resource parents up there? Because we used to call foster parents resource parents. So now we're back to foster parents. And this curriculum actually comes from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And I can tell you more about the curriculum and how we provide that to families through the COE. We work with different organizations to provide the 8-week training to foster parents because we have heard it time and time again that foster parents are struggling, and kids are disrupted when foster parents are struggling, and that only adds to the loss, and it also increases the behavioral problems that our kids are having. So each time a kid has to move, those problems get worse. And so we would really like kids to be able to stay in these homes, and part of that requires that we have a shift in how we see these kids and how we treat them. So we're going to walk through my favorite parts of RPC, and I call it RPC, Resource Parent Curriculum. We're going to walk through my favorite parts. I just went through the curriculum and got some of the activities and slides that have been really helpful. This curriculum is presented by a mental health provider and a foster parent. So you have lived experience, and then you have a professional with education and training, and sometimes those roles you have dual roles in that way. So it's 8 weeks. And I think that foster parents, the times that I've trained with RPC, foster parents really appreciate that there is a foster parent that is walking through this material with them. Because I also have heard this, you don't know what it's like to live with them. They go to school and they do their thing there. You come and visit them for an hour a week. You don't know what I'm living with day in and day out. Do you guys ever hear that? And so I think having a foster parent who has lived with these kids day in and day out adds some meat to this, and parents buy into it much quicker, I think. All right, so let's get started. I think my clicker, I have to plug it in maybe? Yes. Let's try that. That sounded like it worked, right? Go on. Okay. Thank you. I also can just stand here and push the button. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'll see if this will work. Yes, I have both now working. Yep, got it. It's working. Thank you. Yeah, all you had to do was come in. That's right. So we start out this workshop by asking the question, why are we going to talk about trauma today? Because many of the kids that come into foster care have experienced traumatic experiences. And those traumas come with them. They don't check them at the door. They don't come to this new place and say, everything I've been through in the past, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm in a new place. And it affects their behavior, and it affects their feelings. It affects the attachments that they form with the new caregivers. Everything that has happened to them in the past comes with them into this new home. And the thing is that the foster parent hasn't seen what's happened to them in the home before, right? So if we saw it, then maybe it would make more sense, but it doesn't. So that's why we're going to talk about trauma in this workshop. And that trauma, what that child brings into this home, affects the caregiver. It can cause that caregiver to be very fatigued, have really painful memories maybe of their own. They can feel as if they are experiencing the same kind of thoughts and feelings that the child is feeling. And like I said, it often will cause a disruption, because the parent can't make sense of it, and it becomes overwhelming for the parent as well. So from the get-go, we're really selling this in the sense of foster parents do a really, really tough job every single day, a really, really tough job. And so we want to offer them any kind of support that we can. So in this curriculum, there are a lot of quotes. Some people like them, some people don't. We often ask for somebody to read the quote. This foster dad said, "No one really explained to me about the impact of trauma on a child's life. I wish I'd known more about trauma sooner." Have you ever heard foster parents say, "I wish I had known," and then you fill in the blank? "I wish somebody had told me." And I think sometimes that comes with guilt. There's guilt that we or foster parents didn't understand why the child was behaving that way, and they either blame the child or they blame themselves. So throughout this curriculum, there are 9 essential elements that we're going to walk through. I'm just going to briefly touch on them right now just so you guys could get an idea of what it is. And it's actually listed in the handout that we gave you. The first one, the first time we meet, we're going to talk about how trauma has impacted the child that's living with them. And I failed to mention this. This is not a pre-service training. This is not before the foster parent gets children. This is after the child has been placed in the home. It's in this handout right here. It's listed here. So you have to have a child in your home to go through this. Because like many things in life, and maybe we can all relate to this one, before I got married, many people tried to tell me what marriage was going to be like. And I said, thanks, la, la, la. Went on my way, planned my wedding and got married. And then it wasn't until I was married and living out day-to-day life that I thought, oh, this is what they were talking about. Marriage is not my honeymoon. And so that's sort of the same thing. We've told foster parents before how hard it's going to be many times, but you don't really know what you're going to get, what you've got yourself into until you have a child living in your home. And that's why this is an in-service training, once a child's been placed in your home. And most of the time they come to this training saying, help, I don't know what to do with this child. And so that's why we talk about the trauma and how it's impacting their daily life. We talk about helping kids feel safe, the difference between physical safety, because we know the foster homes that we're sending our kids to, they're safe, right? You've checked them out, you've done your your home study, and you found they're safe. They have fire extinguishers, they have smoke detectors. We know that they're safe. But there's a difference between that kind of safety and psychological safety, where a kid feels safe. And oftentimes, foster parents can become insulted that a kid wouldn't feel safe because there's enough food and somebody has said it's safe enough and my fingerprints got taken and I'm a safe person and I want this kid to trust that I'm safe. But the difference is this kid has lived with a lot of unsafe people. And so now you're just another person that has to earn their trust. And this place has to earn their trust before they really feel safe. And that one can be really hard for foster parents and even kids to get to that place of feeling safe. School, they may not feel safe. And then we want to talk to parents about how we want to help the child really understand and manage their own emotion. So we're confused about why the kid may be having these meltdowns. The child is confused too. Oftentimes it doesn't make sense. So something in the environment might trigger the child and now they are overwhelmed. Maybe you guys have had this experience before. You know when you smell something? Have you ever just been walking, we'll say through the mall, and you smell a smell? Has it ever reminded you, takes you back to a place you used to be? And usually, for me, they're happy memories, right? So cinnamon does that for me. It's my favorite spice, and it reminds me of my childhood. But for our kids, it's a smell, it's a sight, it's a touch, and it throws them back into a place that they used to be that was not safe. And it feels very overwhelming to them. And they're not making that connection. It's hard for me as an adult to make that connection. I can't imagine as a kid how much harder that is for them. So we want to help them make those connections and manage those emotions. And we want to help them modify their behaviors, problem behaviors. So they've had these overwhelming emotions and now they react. And we want to show them the connection between what is the trigger and their emotion and then what else could you do besides throw a fit for 2 hours? How else could you get your needs met? So each time that we meet with the foster families, it's about a 2-hour training period, and we go through these things in depth. The fifth one is respecting and supporting positive, stable, and enduring relationships in the life of the child. So this one really reviews for the family, the foster family, the connection the child might have with their biological family. No matter how bad the abuse or the neglect, they were connected in some way to that foster family. This is another thing I hear routinely is, why do they want to be with their mom? Why do they want to be with the person who harmed them? And so this one walks through that and really encourages foster parents to think about ways that they can support those positive, stable relationships and to develop new relationships for the future as well. Number 6 is helping kids to really make sense or make meaning of all of the things that have happened in their life. I don't know if any of you have seen that video Removed. Has anyone seen that video? It's fabulous because in that video, the very beginning starts with her saying, I am. She talks about all the bad things that have happened in her life, and she defines herself by her trauma and her neglect and her abuse. And then at the end of the video, she says, I am not defined by these things. And that's really what number 6 essential element is that our kids do not have to be defined by all the things that have happened to them in the past. They can make meaning out of them, and they can move forward. And we want to empower foster parents to help them make meaning out of it and move forward. 7 is also about empowering foster parents to be an advocate. So once they have this information, we want them to share this information about their kids. So when a teacher says your kid is being bad, the foster parent can say, well, actually, that's the result of, and yes, we want to work to modify that behavior that's not very helpful, but it's not just because my kid is bad. It's because my kid has had some experiences in their past, and they've been triggered in this way, but I'm confident that my child can learn to manage that differently. And then 8 is promoting and supporting trauma-focused assessment and treatment. So for kids who have had a traumatic experience and display PTSD-like symptoms, we want those children to be treated with an evidence-based treatment that has been found to be effective in reducing PTSD symptoms. Those PTSD symptoms would be interfering in their daily lives. And we want to help kids decrease those symptoms so they can function effectively in school, at home, wherever they go. And a lot of times foster parents don't know what treatments are out there, and so we want to tell them, these are the treatments out there, and these are the treatments we want you to advocate for your child to have. And then lastly, and I hate that this one is last, It is taking care of yourself. And what we do try to say throughout the 8 weeks that we're together is taking care of yourself is really a part of all of the different modules. Because if a foster parent is not taking care of themselves, it's really hard to take care of the children in their homes as well. All right, so like I said, I picked out my favorite parts here in this curriculum, and we'll just walk through them. And some of them will require that you do an activity with me. Okay, so this is in the first module, and these are just some myths to avoid right from the get-go. There are lots of foster parents that got into this because they thought if they loved a child enough, the problems would go away. And we want to just tell you that there's not enough love that will erase all of the effects of the things that they've been through. You can love them to the best of your ability, and that's fabulous. But these traumatic experiences they've been through still shape the way that they respond to you. And it's not about you. It really isn't about you. No matter how much you give how much love I give to a child, if they respond in a way that seems inconsistent with that love, it's because of the things that they've been through. It's not because my love isn't enough. It's that they need something different, or they need me to help them walk through what they've been through in the past. How about this one? I bet you guys have heard this. My child should be grateful. I give them a place to live. Don't they see all the things that I do? I think this maybe happens with typical parenting kids, even if they're not foster children, that parents oftentimes can feel resentful. And I've heard it a lot with foster parents. I took them in. I gave them a safe place. I just want to say this. My husband and I had the opportunity to do foster care and then adopt some kids. And one of the best things that our caseworker told us, he said, and he just said this in a class, and it came back to me when my first child was placed with me. He said, when they come to your home, they are not going to be excited to be there. They're not going to be thankful. You're not rescuing them. They don't want to be here. They didn't want to be rescued. And the first kid that came to my house wouldn't get out of the car, and they had to like drag him into my house, and he ran away in 2 days. But that's another story. But I could have taken that very personally, right, that I wasn't doing X, Y, or Z. And of course I can learn from that experience, but I also, it's not about him being grateful. It's that he was taken from somewhere that he wanted to be, and he loved his family, and I was a stranger. My child shouldn't love or feel loyal to an abusive parent. I hear that frequently. And then lastly, it's better to just move on and forget and not talk about past painful experiences. And I've had foster parents tell me that that's worked for them in the past, that they've decided that they're not going to talk about the things that have happened to them in their past. And I say to them, if that worked for you, that's okay. But what we found for kids is that doesn't work. And even if you stuff it, even if you say it's not okay to talk about it, they're living it every day. Those memories flash through their minds. All day long, any place, anywhere. It's unpredictable. And unless we help kids deal with that, it's going to interfere in their lives. This is another really nice part of this curriculum, in my opinion, and that is that we are teaching self-care to foster parents. We want our foster parents to teach the kids self-care and to do some deep breathing. We also want our foster parents to do it for themselves. So like I said, that self-care part, here it is. It is introduced at the beginning, right there in Module 1. How many of you guys practice deep breathing? I got 2, 3, sort of, yeah. Well, the nice part about deep breathing, unlike other relaxation techniques, is you can do this anywhere. And for the most of the time, people aren't going to notice that you're doing it, right? So we practice it. So would you guys be willing to practice that with me right now? Okay, I'll explain what we're going to do, and then we'll do it. So it's nice, square breathing. You can see it, and then you can follow along with it. What we would do is we would breathe in for 4 seconds, and then we'd hold that for 4 seconds. We're going to breathe out for 4 seconds, and then we'd hold that for 4 seconds. Some people like to close their eyes. Some people like to keep their eyes open. It's totally up to you and how you do that. You want to make sure when you're doing it that your belly is going in and out, and it's not just you're doing chest breathing, okay? So sometimes I put my hand on my belly and make my belly, when I breathe in, my belly should go out, and when I breathe out, my belly should go in. And this is fun that you can teach this one to kids as well. Sometimes I have kids lay on the floor and put like a stuffed animal and see if they can raise the stuffed animal up and down from their breathing. Okay, so let's just do this together. Okay, Take a good deep breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it one more time. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Just talking like that calms me, like my shoulder. I feel the weight in my shoulders kind of relax. Yeah, so it's a nice thing to say. Let's practice that together, and then you can go home and try it on your own. Okay, so yeah. I haven't. What is 4, 7, 8?
You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, and then release.
Haven't heard it.
It reminded me of that.
Yeah. Maybe they're both just used to, is that one used to calm? Yeah. Yeah. If that's easier for someone to remember, 4, 7, 8, great. So this module is the third one, and it's understanding trauma's effects. And this one is really about reshaping the way that we see things. So I'm just going to ask you some questions. I'm going to get my notes here and sheet. Okay. So the idea here is that we learn by experience. Everything that we expect and believe is the result of our experiences. So what I think about myself and what I think about you all and what I think about the world in general is because of the experiences that I've had before I came to this room today, right? It's all been learned through that. Okay, so we are going to do a little kind of example of this. Okay, so imagine that you are taking a walk in a park near your home. Okay, so everyone go there with me. And you glance down, and in front of you, you see a huge snake. How do you think that you'd react? Oh, say it out loud. You are going to freak out, and what does it look like to freak out for you? She's going to run the opposite direction. Your heart's going to be pounding, beating really fast. Okay, backing away slowly. Yeah. I'm a screamer, so I would freeze and scream. Yep, so there's all different kinds of responses, right? Now imagine that you have to walk through that same park a couple days later. How do you think you'd feel about it? You're going to be timid. Yep. Nervous. Yeah, hypervigilant, on the lookout. Where's the next snake, right? Where's it going to come from? That's exactly right. And you're going to be watching the ground. You weren't even watching the ground before, but now you're watching the ground because you saw a snake one time. And if you happen to see a stick on the path, you're probably going to be startled, right? Might scream like I do. Because before you even thought about it, with this part of your brain, it registered, another snake, right? Okay. So even if you've been through that park many, many, many times and you've never seen a snake, that one time of seeing that snake has affected your belief about the fact that there could be another snake, right? It changes your perception and makes you expect danger where you didn't even expect danger before, but now you've seen the threat. And the reason for this is because our brains are wired in a way for survival. Our brains are wired to protect us and to keep us alive. So it is much safer for me to think that that stick is a snake than it is for me to think the snake is a stick. Because when I find out that that's just a stick, I wasn't eaten or bit, and now I'm dead. But if I thought that it was a stick when it really was a snake, I could get bit and die. So it's safer to think that it's dangerous. And our brains are wired that way. What it does is when we see that snake, or even the threat of a snake, our body responds. When we are faced with a threat, our body releases chemicals that help us to respond. And we kind of all mentioned these responses. There was a fight, a flight, and a freeze. That's what happens to our bodies. And it's that part of the body that says we got to stay alive, that throws us into action. Even if the action isn't very helpful of standing there and screaming. It at least tells me something is wrong. And my alarm system is going off, right? There's danger. The alarm is on. But if the threat is removed and we find out that that's really a stick, then I go back to my normal state. My alarm system has been turned off. But if that threat continues or is repeated, that system stays on all the time, all the time. And that's really what it's like for our kids who have experienced trauma, neglect and abuse specifically in their homes over and over and over and over again. And when they come and they live with a new caregiver, it doesn't matter that I look different. My name is the same. I'm a foster mom. And guess what? It is better to believe that I am dangerous to keep themselves safe than it is to believe that I am someone safe and different than who they've been cared for before. And their alarm system is on all the time. It is stuck on all the time. So they are looking for any sign that there might be a snake. You could be the next snake. Their school teacher might be the next snake. So they're constantly on alert for that and looking for the danger. And that's why it doesn't make sense. When our kids behave in a way, we think, that's no big deal, the schedule changes. Or a teacher moves too close to them and we think, why did they turn the table upside down? Because they're thinking it's a threat to their survival. It's at this point usually with foster parents in this group that things start to kind of make sense about their alarm is on all the time. The foster parent didn't turn on the alarm, but it's on. It's already on. And so how do we help them turn that alarm off, right? But it is really important to just think about how our brains develop. They develop from the bottom up, like I said. Survival is first. It's after a minute of me standing there and realizing, hey, this isn't a snake, that it's come to the front part of my brain and I've been able to logically think through this. But most of our kids get trapped down here. This is a snake, and I've got to protect myself. And the brain develops by forming connections. We've already talked about this in a sense. So that experience grows the brain. Every time that a mama picks up a baby and talks to that baby, that's growing. That's an experience of trust. Every time the baby cries and the mama comes or the daddy comes and picks up that baby, oh, the world is a safe place. Those interactions with that caregiver are critical to that development. Some of us, I would say most of us, if you lived in a home where someone attended to you, we take it for granted. Like, how many of you can remember how you developed the ability to talk? Right, none of us, right? Because we were too young. But that started with someone looking at us and talking to us, and then when we would make a sound, they would make a sound back to us, and it would go back and forth, and we'd say the words over and over until we eventually, as a child, started saying those words. It's the same thing with trust. It's the same thing with many of the ways in which our brains are wired. We take those things for granted, that I trust people, that I think that the world is a pretty safe place. I take that for granted because I learned that from trustworthy, safe adults, but our kids didn't learn that. And the more that experience is repeated, the more times that my mom picked me up and held me and soothed me, the more trusting I became of the world and other people. And it's the opposite for our kids. You know, the more that they had somebody not attend to them, and the more times they were hit, and the more times that they were not fed, what was wired for them? That the world is not a safe place. That people are not trustworthy. That I have to protect and defend myself. Then we start to think, oh, their behavior seems pretty reasonable given where they've come from and how their brain has now been wired. Being exposed to trauma day in and day out It changes the way that that brain is developed and wired. Like I said, kids are on constant alert for that danger. They're quick to react. Those stress hormones are going through their brains all the time, through their bodies, and that actually interferes with the typical development of the higher brain functions. So most of the kids that we work with don't look like their chronological age. So my 14-year-old, when she moved in with me, I could not compare her to other 14-year-olds because she didn't look like other typical 14-year-olds. She behaved more like, in her thoughts and in her behavior, much more like a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. Didn't know how to ride a bike. Many things that you learn at 5, 6, and 7, she just was developmentally not there. Why? Because she wanted to not be 14? No, she really wanted to be 14. But because she spent her days and her nights protecting herself, figuring out what she was going to eat, how she was not going to get hit. And so that interferes with her ability to learn the other things that typical kids are learning at 5 and 6 and 7. So I hear that a lot. Do you guys, this kid is not acting like a 14-year-old. What's wrong with them? They act like a baby. Have you heard that? Right. It's because they didn't get the chance to develop the skills that kids who live in safe homes get the chance to develop. So that's how we go through this. And we go through each stage. And I could go through these with you, but I think there's some other things that we should talk about today. Can you tell this is one of my favorite things to talk about? It is. So the thing that we want you to take away from this section for foster parents and even for you to go and talk to foster parents about is that kids can get back on track. It's not like once they've missed the opportunity to do it, they can never do it. Is it harder? Absolutely. You have to rewire. You have to like take all the bad, think about a house. You have to notice there's faulty wiring here, and we need to first pull off the sheetrock, and we got to get in that wall, and we have to redo all the wiring in this house. But it's possible. We know that kids are capable of learning new ways of thinking and relating and responding, and that they can become aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they can actually stop themselves from responding in old ways that are not very helpful in getting their needs met. They can unlearn and then relearn. But that's a lot of work for the foster parent and for the child. But it is possible. It is possible. And it also validates the hard work that the foster parents are doing day in and day out. So there is hope, definitely. So just what can they do? And this is a nice section in all of the modules. It goes through, so what do we do now? Now you've told me this horrible thing about how their brains are wired in this way, and you've now told me there's hope, but what exactly do you do? And we walk through some of the things that you can do. Being consistent in both your love and your protection, being available to them emotionally and physically, recognizing their needs, kind of being a detective. The foster parent gets to be a detective. Putting pieces together. Every time that we go to this one place, they seem to have a meltdown. Every time I say the word no, they have you heard that? Every time I hear it a lot. Every time I say the word no, my child has a meltdown. I had a child where anytime I gave him a command to do something, we would end up in this 2-hour tantrum. Right? So I had to figure out some ways to help him respond to me where I wasn't as much of a threat. He really felt threatened by me. I don't feel like I'm threatening. I haven't had many people tell me that I'm physically threatening, but he felt physically threatened by me. And so I had to figure out a new way to interact with him. And then provide opportunities to safely explore the world. That one can be really helpful. Finding things that the kids are good at or could be good at or interested in and letting them master something. Our kids daily are being told that they're not good at a lot of things. You're not the same as other kids your age, and you're not, and you're not, and you're not. We want to find things that they are good at and they do master. Think about 5-year-olds, typical developing 5-year-olds. They walk into a room to strangers. They will tell you what they're good at. You know what? The other day, I am a great swimmer. And it's things that don't, to us as adults, that's not really a big deal, but to the kid, it's a huge deal. That's because childhood development really is about mastering things. It's about mastering reading and writing and interactions with people. And the foster kids that we work with, oftentimes they haven't been able to master anything. So they feel like failures. Can you imagine walking through your whole life feeling like a failure? Our kids do, and they're so young. So we want to give them things that they can do, like maybe it's swimming, maybe it's riding a bike, maybe it's, who knows what it could be, being creative with these kids to find out what they like and then allowing them to master it. Okay, so this is one of the Invisible Suitcase, and I talked to you about this a little bit at the beginning, and that is this idea that those experiences that our kids had before shape what they believe about themselves. Maybe they were told their whole lives that they were bad, that they don't deserve love, so they believe that about themselves. And their suitcases are packed full of these beliefs. Beliefs about themselves, beliefs about caregivers. Caregivers don't protect us. Caregivers don't care about us. Caregivers aren't available. We don't need caregivers. I've heard that one a lot. We don't need an adult to help us in this world, and that the world is just a scary place. And their suitcases are packed full of these beliefs. And they carry them into our homes, and into the school, and into our offices. And they believe this. They believe this. And it affects every aspect of their lives, how they interact with us and others. You're going to leave me. No one ever sticks around. You know, I've said this about my kids before, that they take my discipline really well. And at some points, you know, I've had foster parents tell me this, well, he didn't look like it hurt him, like the punishment didn't, like, get him. And when I think about discipline for my kids, it's to teach them how to do it differently. That's really what my goal is to teach them how to do this more effectively. And, you know, my kids have endured a lot. Actually, when I see my kids take my correction, and they say, okay, I can do that, like it doesn't faze them, that's actually a positive. Because one of the things that they believe is that they've been through a lot of bad stuff. And one of my kids in particular thinks he's tough. Like he can handle any consequence I give him. And so on one hand, maybe I could let that bother me, like maybe it's not really working. Or on the other hand, I can say, this is another thing that he says about himself that's actually positive. So not everything that they have in their suitcase is negative, but it is the result of where they came from. So one of the things that we want to do as foster parents is to recognize that when my child responds in a certain way, it is usually not about what I've done or haven't done. It's about where they've come from. So there's this one example that I will give in this section, and that is, we were just talking about this the other day. So my 9-year-old, he was actually 8 when he came to live with me, and he had these meltdowns that would last, I don't even know, whole Saturdays it felt like. And one morning I decided before school, I thought I am going to do a nice thing for him, and I'll have his breakfast all ready for him. I'll be such a good mom. And I put his food out on the table, and it's a cereal that he wanted, and I had gone to the store that weekend, and he had told me he liked the cereal, so I bought 10 boxes of it. And I know it's kind of silly, but I just wanted him to know, like, great, I can buy, they're always here for you. He had this real hard time with food, that he didn't have enough food. So anyway, so I wanted him to know the cabinets are full of some of the food that you like. And the foster family that he had come from before, they had told me that food was a major issue. Like they would spend 2 to 3 hours a night getting him to eat his food. So I didn't want this battle, so I just got him some things that he really liked. And that morning I got up early, made his breakfast the way I thought he liked it, and I got him up and he came to the table and I said, your breakfast is ready, with a big smile on my face. And he asked me, it was milk and cereal was part of it, and he asked me how I poured it. Did you put the milk in first or did you put the cereal in first? And whatever, I can't even remember how I answered it, but I did it wrong. And he took that table and he turned that table upside down. And through this fit, I had milk all over me, he had all over him. I'm standing there going, what is happening? And because I had this information, I could stand there and say to myself and respond to him very differently than I think I would have if I did not have this information. This is not about the cereal. This is not about that I wanted to provide him something that I thought he liked and I did it wrong. Actually, what this is about all the mamas that he's had before me that didn't know how to care for him. Because what he was screaming at me was, you don't love me, you don't know me. And And I responded very differently in that situation than I would have if I had taken it personally and been like, I did it right. I've done it right. I do love you, right? That is not helpful in that moment. What's helpful in that moment is for me, which is painful. You can probably see in my eyes, it's painful to think about all the moms that he had before me who did not love him or care for him, and what that brought up in him reminded him of all those experiences that he had had. He never did that again. One time, we cleaned it up, and I tried to do it right the next time for him. So we, in those situations, I needed to unpack for him. One of the lies that he had was, mamas don't care. Mamas don't know me. Mamas don't know how to. So one of the things I want to put back in that suitcase is this mama does know you. This mama knows how to be a mama in the way of knowing you and loving you. So spent a lot of time proving that to him, which made him feel safer and more capable. Like, I don't have to flip a table over to tell you how I'm feeling, or that I'm scared, or that I'm hurting. These are the beliefs that we want to repack in that suitcase, is that they are safe, that they are capable, and that they're lovable. That takes a lot of time and energy. Yeah. So it's we have to prove to them, like that caseworker told me, when they come to my house, they're not going to be excited that I'm here to save them. I had to prove to every child in my home, and still improving in some ways, that I am a safe adult who wants to protect them from harm. Not all of my kids believe that every day. Some of them struggle with that. That I am going to support them and nurture them and respond to them every time, just like an infant. Every single time the baby cries, we go running. What's happening? Do I need to change your diaper? Do you need food? Are you cold? That's when I hear my kids in distress. That's our response, and they need that wired, millions of times over for them to actually believe that I do care for them in that way, and that I do want to support them, and I do want to nurture them, and that they are lovable. They're worth it. They're worth it, and they were told for years that they were not worth it. We don't want them to grow up and believe that. Okay, now this is why you have those cards. And we're going to do this little fun exercise, and we'll end with this, I think, today. So this one is, when you feel connected to something, that connection immediately gives you a purpose for living. Everything that we're connected to defines who we are. Maybe I mentioned that a little bit earlier. But if I were to tell you who I am, it's all based on my connection, right? So connections really give us that purpose for living. What keeps us connected? Our relationships. So if I were to tell you who I am the mother of, that's my family, right? I'm the wife of, these are my friends, these are my coworkers. Your life story, what you're connected in that way, and that, gives your life meaning. Whether that's your personal story, or your family, or your culture, or even dogs, animals, places or things or rituals or practices in your family or in your workplace. Those all give you meaning. So what I want you to do is take your cards, take your index cards. I hope you all have a pen to write with. If you don't, let me know and we'll get you one. And I want you to write down some of the connections that you have in your life. What are you connected to? What defines you? What gives your life meaning? Or defines your place in the world? Yes, please. Thank you so much for that clarification. One connection on each card. And if you could do all 5 cards, that would be awesome. All right. Everybody done? It looks like it. Okay, so now I want you to take one of your cards and give it away. I want you to put it at the top of your table. So look through your cards and decide which one you're going to give away. Okay. And now you got it? Everybody did it? Okay, now I want you to hold your cards up. I don't want you to see, let me see what they are, but I want you to hold them up. And I'm going to come around and I'm going to take some from you. I won't even look. So sorry. I tried to take 4 from you. Try not to look at yours when I... All right, now you have one thing left, right? How does it feel to have that one thing left? You're okay with it? You're okay with it? Just have your dog. That's it. Yeah. What was it like for you to give up one? I heard some oohs and ahs. What was that like? Not easy. You didn't... You tried to give up the least important one. Yeah. Yeah. What was it like for me to come around and take 3 from you? You thought I was only going to take 1. Yeah, I tricked you. I took 3. And I left you with 1. Yeah. So I bet you didn't really like me while I was taking the 3. Yeah. 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 Oh, so the one you would have chosen to keep. I took it away from you.
I was okay with the one that I had left was the one I would have kept.
Okay.
It could have been different, but I would have chosen.
Yeah, yeah. So most of the time when we do this with foster parents, we get responses similar. Some people like choosing better than they like having me take it. So you get a decision in which one of the 5 you're going to give away. But oftentimes we can all relate to the sense of our children, our foster children, don't get a choice about what connections they keep and they don't keep. They don't get to take their dogs. They don't get to take the clothes that they wanted. I mean, let's think about us. If I was going to move today, I pack up what I want to take, right? We choose the connections we keep, and our kids don't get that same opportunity. They show up at my house with things that somebody else probably packed for them because they got 2 hours notice that they were leaving in the first place. And all of the connections, even just the material things, but how about the relationships? How about the school teachers? How about the neighbors? All the connections that we don't know about that they've had to lose before they get to my house. So they've lost a lot before they enter into my home. And I think that it's really powerful in the sense of we think we're saving them when they come through our doors, but really they've had to lose a lot to come through those doors. They've had to leave everything behind that they've known and that has in some ways felt safe to them. Those connections have been taken away from them. How they defined who I am. I was in so-and-so's class. You ask a kid what they're doing or what they like or who they are, and they'll tell you, I'm in kindergarten. Well, who's your teacher? They'll tell you the teacher's name. Those are the things, those are the connections that are important to them. That's what defines them. No longer do they have that. What was lovable about them might have been where they were, the place they were, what they were connected to, that they were capable of. My connection to my family oftentimes is what helps me remember that I can get through most anything. Now, you strip me of my family, and I'm not so sure I'd be as motivated as I am to do the things that I need to do on a daily basis. And that's what we do to these kids. They're stripped of everything. And oftentimes they're not even told why or how or are they ever going to see them again. And who will they be in their future? I know who I'll be in my future because of the connections that I have presently and I've had in my past. But if all those are taken away from me, I'm not so sure who I'd be in the future. So this is a good one for us to put ourselves in their shoes. And if it was uncomfortable for us, just in this exercise, imagine what it's like in real life. Okay. Oh, I just really like this quote. This is the last one I'll share with you. Being taken away from my parents didn't bother me. But being torn away from my brothers and sisters, they were my whole life. It was probably the most painful thing in the world They told me I would be able to see them a lot, but I was lucky to see them at all. Again, those connections that we take for granted, that our kids oftentimes have no say about if they'll ever see these people again. I have like 25 more slides, but time would not allow me to go through them all. So, do want you to know that it's called Caring for Children Who Have Experienced Trauma, a workshop for our resource parents. It's 8 weeks long. This is just some of the information that is in that curriculum that we go through with foster parents. You know, in my experience as being a foster parent and also of training foster parents, I've seen it's a shift in the way that we see our kids. We see them through that trauma lens, and it changes the way that we respond to them. And it decreases the number of placements that our kids have to be disrupted from. And so if any of you are interested in knowing more about this curriculum or in having a group start within your agency, you can contact the Center of Excellence. There are 2 of us that do this, co-facilitate, and try to get that started in your agency where you can go on to facilitate more groups for your foster parents. Do you guys have any questions or comments or thoughts? No? I really appreciate you participating and being willing to do that exercise with me. And I thank you all for being here. Don't forget to turn in your survey and get your certificate. Thank you.